We are back, and now we are joined by our special guest, who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting before.
And I was saying his name wrong.
Oh, it's all good. George Steeves. Although I was flattered.
Steeves.
Yes, Steeves.
Steeves.
Yes.
I was saying Reeves.
Which I'm flattered by because that was the original Superman.
Right.
So I would like to consider myself the Superman of the autism community.
Well, I'm dubbing you that. I'm saying George is the Superman of the autism community. And George has been with us before when it was just he and I.
Okay.
So this is the first time that Nancy gets to be here. But I'm a big fan of George's. And also, you know, we have had Kobe Bird on the show a lot with his mom, Rachel Bird, and they're big fans of yours as well. And so the last time you were on, though, you had already done the Hollywood Fringe Festival with your show, and you were an award winner, and it went great. And in fact, I was getting ready to do a show at the Hollywood Fringe, and you were giving me all kinds of tips on the last show, and you were getting ready to take your show to the Edinburgh Festival. So for people who don't know what Edinburgh is, talk a little bit about it, and then we have to have the update on what happened.
And talk about the show, because I don't know anything about the show.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, my show is called Magic 8 Ball, My Life with Asperger's, and I premiered it at the 2017 Hollywood Fringe. Out of over 300 shows, it won 3 awards.
Great.
And I since gone on to do the North Hollywood Fringe Festival in the fall, where it won its 4th award for Best One-Person Show Comedy. And I met Shannon in early 2018. I was at AutFest, which is an autism film festival. And I was going around handing out my flyers, which had my Indiegogo link on it because I had started an Indiegogo page to raise funds to take my show to Edinburgh Fringe. Now, for those of you who don't know, Edinburgh Fringe is the biggest theater festival in the world. I think over 3,000 shows went last year. It is like it's the biggest theater festival in the world, but it's really expensive to go, and especially if you're going to have a team behind you to promote the show. Because it's easy to get lost in a shuffle of 3,000 shows.
Right.
Yeah.
So it costs $15,000 alone to go. And that doesn't include airfare, and that doesn't include money to eat while you're there.
Right.
So for all of you who watched for all of you who watched my last interview, don't worry, I am not begging for money this time around. So what happened was I started the Indiegogo page, and I came on here on Autism-Live to promote it and was begging people to donate. And I ended up not making the $15,000 that I needed, unfortunately. So what I did was I worked out a deal with my producer, Michael Blaha. Big shout out to him, because he had never did this for any other show, ever. And he's been doing this since 2000, taking shows there. So what I did was I worked out a deal saying, okay, I have this amount of money I can give you right now. Let's just absorb from the ticket sales in Scotland. Let's absorb from my deposit for the flat that I was staying in. And then after that, after you recoup all of those expenses, I will then make the difference and pay you back in monthly installments what I owe. So I walked.
That's commitment.
Yes. So I walked into Edinburgh owing $7,950. After my ticket sales, after the deposit came back on the flat I stayed in for the entire month I was there, because I was there for an entire month, I did. I only owed $3,048.
Good for you.
Which I paid off in 4 monthly installments of $762.
Wow.
What an achievement. Yeah.
And I won my 5th award when I was in Scotland. Out of 3,000 shows, I was one of the few hundred selected to be a pick of the Fringe.
Great.
Amazing.
So tell us about the show, because I know nothing about it.
Well, it's a 1-hour, one-man show that I wrote, and I just talk about my entire life in 1 hour, spanning all the way from early childhood to adulthood, and what it was like to grow up on the spectrum before it was popular, because I was a child of the 90s in rural Virginia. And one of my jokes in the show is I had Asperger's before it was trendy.
Right.
And I talk about all the trials and tribulations, the struggles of fitting in and dating and trying to find acceptance among your peers. And I was in love with this lovely show called American Idol when I was younger.
Right.
And I wanted to be a singer and I wanted to be an actor, and so I had this hidden standard in myself that, oh, well, maybe if I become a star, then I'll be accepted by everybody,
right.
and then everybody's gonna love me. And the show is all about the journey of self-acceptance and learning that you don't need all these other elements to validate you. You validate you.
And you've gotten rave reviews from the show. You sing in the show.
I do. I sing, I act, I tell jokes. It's a one-man tour de force that I do in 1 hour, and it's like a marathon. So that's why when I did Edinburgh, it was exhausting, but very rewarding because I did 26 shows in 26 days.
Wow.
And on my one day off was when I was going over to a different theater to perform in the Mervyn Stutter Pick of the Fringe showcase.
Right.
Where I didn't do my whole show, but I did snippets of my show as part of the showcase.
And your shows were very well attended, I hear, in Edinburgh. And there's a certain amount of busking that they call it, where you have to go out and stand on the street corner and hand out flyers and promote your show.
Yes.
And I heard you killed that.
Well, it was definitely a challenge because having Asperger's, I get overwhelmed by people, and it's a bunch of people. But I luckily didn't have to do that every single day because what I liked about having my producer was my producer puts together interns and a flyering team to go out and hand out the flyers for you. And because of my producer, I was able to get 2 reviews on the show. Broadway Baby, an international publication, gave me 4 stars.
Wonderful.
So they're able to advertise if your show gets a 4-star rating. I was reviewed by The Scotsman, a local paper in Edinburgh, Scotland. And luckily, I did the show in Virginia in July before I went to Edinburgh in August, which definitely had its own set of challenges. I am a Democrat, and I'm very left in my leanings, and I went to go do the show in front of a bunch of conservative Republicans who voted for Donald Trump.
Right.
I don't speak too fondly of the current president.
In the show?
Yes, because it did break my heart as a man on the autism spectrum that we had a presidential candidate who openly mocked a disabled reporter.
Right.
And he still won. And then after he wins, you try to find the silver lining. Maybe he'll pick a good cabinet. But then Betsy DeVos gets chosen as Secretary of Education. And I don't say his name, I don't say Betsy's name, but I make it very clear, like, and his pick for Secretary of Education knows nothing about the public school system or this federal law that protects students with disabilities. And I was a special needs student in a public high school. I wouldn't be in the position that I am today, a college graduate, if it wasn't for the fantastic special education and learning support teachers that I had over the years.
So what was it like performing for that group of people?
I was very nervous, but luckily, even if people didn't agree with me, they were still respectful. Nobody booed me or threw a shoe or yelled out, "You're wrong."
Right.
And that was one of the reasons why it scared me, but I wanted to do it in Virginia before I went to Scotland because regardless of whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, my plea was we got to at least start talking to each other again.
That's right.
That's the first step in healing as a nation because we're so divided right now and everything is so polarized. And I mean, look, one of my lifelong friends voted for Donald Trump, and on top of doing this show, I have a lovely documentarian named Jules who has been following me around everywhere, and we are currently in the beginning of post-production for a documentary feature film that has tracked all of this.
Okay.
She followed me from California to Virginia on a cross-country road trip. She was my travel companion. She followed me from Virginia to Pennsylvania to Scotland.
Wonderful.
And we're going to shoot a couple more things in Los Angeles next month, and she's even coming with me to New York.
Very cool. When we want to talk about New York, but something happened between Scotland and New York that we were mentioning before about Richard Schiff and Denim and Diamonds.
Yes.
So tell us what happened from your end.
Well, I met Richard Schiff at Augfest, and I, bold as brass, gave him a flyer to my Indiegogo thing. He didn't donate, but he followed me on my Twitter, and I followed him back, and he retweeted it. And so I kept in touch with him through Twitter, and he he mentioned my show, and how I actually found out about it was through Kobe's mom. Because Kobe and his mom, Rachel, were there.
Right.
And,
Kobe Bird.
Yes, Kobe Bird. And Rachel reached out to me and said, by the way, he mentioned you in his speech as one of the many people he has met since doing The Good Doctor.
Right.
And I was very honored, and I was very flattered by that. So I reached out to Richard again on Twitter in October because I was doing a show at Cal State University, Los Angeles. I have two directors in this show, Crystal Wilson and Penny Wilson. And Penny Wilson is a professor at Cal State, Los Angeles. And they had Ability Awareness Week in October, and my show was part of Ability Awareness Week. And it was completely free to attend. It was a matinee show during the daytime, so it was going to be a little tougher to get audience because everybody has jobs.
Right.
But I did reach out to Richard Schiff and go, hey, if you're in town, the show is free. Would you like to attend? And he brought himself and his son.
His son, who is on the autism spectrum.
As well, and I got to meet him after the show, and I got to pose for pictures with Richard, and it was a huge honor to have Richard in my audience. Me being a character actor myself, I've been following his career for years, whether it was The West Wing or he did this teen movie in 2000 called Whatever It Takes, where he played a coach, and he was very funny in that. He did a guest star appearance on Allison Janney's current show, Mom, which I'm a really big fan of.
Yeah.
So that was a nice little West Wing reunion they had. And it was truly an honor. And I recently tweeted Richard about my exciting announcement of going to New York City, and he retweeted me. I'm in touch with his son through Facebook. He wants to be on my documentary because I'm interviewing other people on the spectrum everywhere I go. I'm interviewing people in Virginia, Pennsylvania. I met people in Scotland who are from the UK who agreed to come on and let me interview them because I want to hear other people's perspectives and other people's journeys. So while this movie is about me and sharing my journey through doing my show and growing up on the spectrum, I wanted to bring in other people's stories as well. And Dina, who has her own documentary feature film, came on and did my documentary as well. So Jules shot the two of us together when I was in Pennsylvania.
Yes, that was the first conversation that you and I had because we were at Autfest and they were showing Dina that film. Oh my gosh, I love that film so much. And we were having a big, it actually won at Autfest for Best Documentary, as it should have.
Absolutely.
And if you haven't seen Dina, oh my God, it's such a great, great film. And so you and I were talking about that because you're friends with Dina and you knew some of the people around.
Small world. I went to high school with one of the directors of Dina, Dan Sickles. Dan was 1 year above me, but we both went to the same high school. We were in drama club together, so we knew each other. And I had no idea what Dina was about until I saw it during the summer of 2017 when Sundance brought it out here for a special screening because it won at Sundance, I believe. And then when I was watching the movie, I was like, oh, this is about my community. You know, I jokingly say, my people.
That's right.
And then so I got to meet Dina, and Dina and I exchanged numbers, and we've been in touch. And every time I'm in Pennsylvania visiting my parents, I always visit Dina. And
it's a wonderful thing.
And
so we should get to the big news, though, because you have something big that's happening. We've mentioned New York a couple of times.
Yes.
So what is happening with New York?
After 2 years of doing this show, and 3 years because I started developing it in 2016. I developed it a year before I premiered it. My show is finally making its New York City debut.
That's awesome. That's big news.
I'm going to be at the Crane Theater, which is in Manhattan's East Village.
Okay.
And it has been a dream of mine to, I've done this show at Hollywood Fringe, North Hollywood Fringe, Edinburgh Fringe. I did Solo Fest at Whitefire. I've done Thousand Oaks at Hillcrest Center for the Arts. I've done Virginia at Westmoreland Players Theater, where I was on stage for the first time as a kid. I've gone all over the place, but now I'm finally going to New York City.
That's awesome. So when is this happening, and how can people get tickets?
Well, it will be on Tuesday, May 28th at 8 o'clock p.m. And how you can get tickets is www.horsetrade.info. It's the Horse Trade Theater Company, and they have the Crane Theater and under St. Mark's. So yeah, just type in www.horsetrade.info .info, and tickets are available right there. It's $20 general admission and $15 for students and seniors, and it's one night only in New York City. So anybody who's watching this who is in New York or in the tri-state area, please come and see this show.
Okay, May 28th,
Yep,
8
Tuesday.
p.m.
Yep.
And if they want to know more about the show, like you have a Facebook page about it, so tell them where they can go to find out more info.
I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram at George F. Steeves, George-F, and then Steeves, Steeves. Or I have a personal Facebook page that I'm always on. I'm always plugging and promoting, and that's facebook.com/george.steeves98.
Okay.
Now, George, go ahead.
No, you
So I was going to go back to the actual content of the play.
Oh, that's okay.
When did you get involved in theater? And first of all, when were you diagnosed with Asperger's?
Okay, that's fine. I was diagnosed with Asperger's in 2000 when I was 11 years old.
Okay.
I had a really late diagnosis because usually children get diagnosed at much earlier ages these days. However, growing up in the 90s in rural Virginia, this was new to a lot of pediatricians. And, this was, my mother was like, they had their suspicions about it, but they didn't want to put a label on it. And because I was high functioning as a child, it was really hard to categorize me.
So when you were young, you were very high functioning. You did not. What did you what symptoms did you have, or what characteristics did you have?
I definitely had echolalia when I was younger. And because my parents would show me Disney movies, so there was a period when I was 3 years old where you could ask me any question under the sun, and I reenact this in my show. Any question, and all I could say was Cinderella, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty. That's all I would say. That's all I had. And then my mom was a really big fan of a soap opera called All My Children. And so they had the opening credits where the book would open up and they would have all the pictures of the characters. And my mom would teach me how to say all the All My Children characters, and I would just repeat them back. And because Susan Lucci's picture was so big, I would always be the most excited, and I would say, Erica! I really want Susan Lucci to see the show because I know she would appreciate that. I keep meaning to reach out to her on Twitter, but I got to get around to it.
So when did you get involved in theater as a child?
Well, Westmoreland Players Theater, which is where I did my show last summer, was the first time I was ever on stage when I was 6 years old. So it was like a nice homecoming to come full circle as a grown adult and do your show there. I did Oliver. That was the only play I did with the Westmoreland Players, but my family was very involved with that theater in the 90s. It was a community theater in Virginia. So tons of plays that my mom or my dad or my sister did in the 90s. We moved to Pennsylvania in 2000 from Virginia. And then I knew I wanted to be an actor because of my love of movies, but I didn't have parents in the industry or any connections, and we didn't live in Hollywood, so I just made the most of resources that I had around me, and that involved school theater. So in 6th grade, I did my first school play, which was Fiddler on the Roof, which I also talk about in my show, because that was like an education on Jewish culture. Because my father's a retired Episcopal priest, and I lived in Virginia for 10 years, and I didn't even know what Judaism was until I moved up to the suburbs of Philadelphia. So learning about Judaism and Fiddler on the Roof, that was like a crash course. And then throughout the rest of middle school and high school and my first year of college, I continued doing school theater. And then when I moved out here, I went to college and I joined my first acting class and started auditioning for film and television roles. I didn't have representation so much as it was self-submitting on Actors Access and LA Casting and Now Casting, so it was a lot of short films that I was doing or student films just to get my experience and to get some footage of me acting, to get a reel going.
And do you have representation now, or is that something you're still seeking?
I do. I'm represented by the fabulous Gail Williamson at KMR, who also represents Kobe Bird, and haven't had the big break yet, but I've been very fortunate. I went in for The Good Doctor for a guest starring role, and I got pinned, so it's like the final 3 selections for the producer. I've been in for Atypical twice, and they're still shooting season 3, so maybe I'll still get called in.
So what's the dream for you as an actor? Like, if you could be doing anything, what would it be?
I mean, I'm right now I'm driving for Uber and Lyft, and I'm doing landscaping jobs on the side as a landscaper's assistant to pay my bills.
Right.
My ultimate dream would just to be a working actor, where I wouldn't need another job to supplement income. So even if I was on a soap for 25 years and nobody knew who I was, but if my bills were paid, I can be content with that. Now, obviously, like most actors, I do have those dreams of winning the Academy Award, and because people always say, shoot for the stars, you never know what planet you're going to land on. So obviously I have those big dreams of winning an Oscar or an Emmy or a Tony or...
But is there anybody you in particularly would love to work with? I always love putting it out there because you never know, right?
Well, I mean, there's a number of people I would love to work with. Okay. I have a list that's as long as a novel, but my hope for this one-man show when I take it to New York City is I get to have the woman who inspired me to do this show in the first place come and see the show. That is my hope.
And who is that?
Whoopi Goldberg.
Okay.
And I already got to meet Whoopi. I met her in 2016 when I was just developing the show. I was in the audience for The View because my friend was doing Broadway. One of my friends, Rachel Zatkoff, was playing Christine Daae 2 performances a week in Phantom of the Opera. Oh. And this is my first high school friend to make it to Broadway, so I had to go and see that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I got to go to the audience in The View, and I got to tell one of the ushers that she's my inspiration, and they were like, oh, well, we'll make sure she hears that during the commercial break. So they gave me a mic, and I was just like, hi, Whoopi, my name is George, I'm an actor, I came all the way from LA to do this, and I just wanted you to know it was your one-woman show from the 80s that inspired me to do a one-man show about what it's like to have Asperger's. She was like, oh, what's it called? When's it gonna be? Where's it gonna be? And then I wrote down all my information, and one of the ushers handed it to her.
Okay.
How wonderful.
2 months later, I followed up with her in Vegas, and I got to go up on stage and hug her.
That's wonderful.
So
Whoopi.
Yes, Whoopi Goldberg. If you're watching this, please come see the show. It's one night only, and
May 28th.
May 28th, Tuesday, May 28th, the day after Memorial Day.
And what is the name of the theater again?
The Crane Theater, Krane. So.
And we get the tickets by going where?
On horsetrade.info.
Okay, and then look for the show there. And the name of the show?
Magic 8 Ball, My Life with Asperger's.
Okay.
Okay.
So Whoopi, get yourself there if you possibly can.
Yes.
Because that would be super awesome, and we love seeing dreams come true. And I bet it would tickle her pink to be able to be there and know that you were inspired by her doing a one-woman show.
Well, yes, because I was watching an episode of Oprah's Masterclass, and Whoopi Goldberg was on there talking about the beginning of her career and struggling and how she just wanted to work as an actor, but she wasn't having any luck getting jobs. So she put together this one-woman show that displayed all the different characters she could do. And I was like, well, maybe I should do a one-man show, because I wasn't having any luck getting any jobs.
Right.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was studying at an improv school called The Groundlings.
Right.
And I started to develop all these sketch characters. So I was like, well, maybe I can do a show that displays all of my sketch characters. But then I started going on meetings with different people to possibly collaborate on doing the show with. And this one guy, I ended up not working with him because he cost way too much money. He was charging like $4,000 to put together the show with me, and I didn't have that kind of money.
Yeah.
But he told me in the middle of my meeting, he was like, hold on, wait a minute, you have Asperger's? That's your show. That needs to be the center of your show, because that's a show that audiences are going to want to see and that, audiences are going to connect with. And another exciting piece of news I have is that after I'm done in New York in May, I will be coming back full circle where it all began to the Hollywood Fringe Festival in June. I will be there on one night only homecoming full circle performance on Sunday, June 16th at 7:00 p.m. at the Let Live Theater at the Actors Company located at 916 North Formosa. I really hope you can make it to this one.
Yeah, I know. We've had like horrible timing all along that I've not yet been I want to see the show, and I've heard people rave about it.
Tickets
George.
are only $12, and one of my biggest hits has been mothers and fathers of children on the spectrum.
Yeah.
I've had mothers and fathers. I had a woman when I did it in Thousand Oaks come up to me sobbing, saying, my son is 30 years old, he has Asperger's, You told his story. Thank you.
Oh, that's great.
And you can get those tickets at www.hollywoodfringe.org.
You know how to work it, George, I gotta say.
You do.
You know, the thing that I see in you is that you have the persistence that people who are successful have. Like, you just keep on plugging and keep on looking for the next opportunity, and you are very good at promoting your stuff, which is essential. This is
Absolutely.
a business, and you're like, I respect and admire and want to be you when I grow up. Honestly, because like that's a really hard thing to do.
That persistence is very difficult to come by.
Honestly, that's everything, really. I mean, of course, talent plays a role, but already clearly you have that. And, you know, a lot of people have talent, but it's people who have talent and the persistence and understand that they have to promote themselves that tend to do the best. So I know you're going to be just fine, and it's just a matter of time before you're going to be working full-time as an actor.
Oh, thank you.
It will happen.
Congratulations on all your success so far.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So we want to thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for
I want
coming
to
by
run
today.
through the websites again a couple of times.
That's okay.
So that people that know in the dates. So May 28th. Go ahead, you tell them.
Yeah, I'm happy to be back. I consider myself hopefully a friend of the show now that I've done
course.
2 appearances.
Yes.
So New York City is Tuesday, May 28th at 8:00 p.m. at the Crane Theater located in the East Village in Manhattan. And tickets are available at www.horsetrade.info, HORSE TRADE.info. And then
But then they have to search the title of the show, which is Magic 8 Ball.
And then it'll be right there on the calendar once you get on the website, Magic 8 Ball, My Life with Asperger's.
Wonderful. And then Hollywood Fringe?
Yep, and then June, one night only again, Hollywood Fringe Festival. Sunday, June 16th, Father's Day, second Father's Day show I'm doing, because when I did it at 2017 Hollywood Fringe, another show fell on Father's Day, and I never planned it either time.
Funny, that's funny.
So that'll be Father's Day, June 16th at 7 p.m. at the Let Live Theater at the Actors Company, which is located on 916 North Formosa Avenue, and tickets are available at www.hollywoodfringe.org.
And one last thing I'm going to have you say again is, where can they find more information just about you or follow you?
Well, if you want to follow me, I am on Twitter and Instagram at George F. Steeves, GeorgeFSteeves, or you can just come onto my personal Facebook page. I talk with everybody on there, and that is facebook.com/George.Steeves98.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
being here.
George.
Such
Really
a
a pleasure to have you.
Absolutely. We're going to take a short break and then come back to close out the show. Stick with us. Hey, thanks for watching Autism Live. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.